This week we are going to show you how we are banding our chickens and rotating our flock for consistent egg production. Welcome back if you are new. My name is Karyn, and my husband Dan and I are on a journey to become more self-sufficient by the time we retire. One of the things that we are doing is raising chickens. We have a lot of new people on our channel since I've done a chicken video, and so I just want to really quick familiarize you with our flock and what we've done. Then we'll talk about banding because we just did that again this week, and then I'll show you how we are rotating our chickens so that we always have consistent egg production, and then we'll talk a little bit about light and why that might be important to you in your coop over the winter. So in 2020, the first thing we did to start becoming more self-sufficient was to build a nice chicken coop with dual runs so that we could separate some of the birds if we needed to. Now Dan built this coop with about 95% repurposed materials, things we got for free or nearly nothing, and really the only thing that we got new for this chicken coop was the hardware cloth, some foam insulation for the walls, and the screws and bolts and things that Dan used to attach things. So if you want to see a link to an older video that's the full build of this coop, I will link to that in the description. Now a little background on our flock if you are a new subscriber or if you're an old subscriber just coming back. We got our first flock in spring of 2021. We got 24 hens and 2 roosters. The first flock was a mix of barred rock and black Jersey giant. Both of those breeds are cold hardy. They lay a large size egg and are decent meat birds. And we've only lost a couple of the original hens over the last 2 years. In the spring of 2022, we decided we would try hatching our own chicks. We ended up getting about 14 chicks out of our efforts, half of which ended up being roosters. Dan built a chick shack, which is kind of a transition house for the chicks. They start out in the house at the end of May, and after about 5 weeks they're ready to go outside, and it's also warm enough in Iowa at that point for them to be outside. So we put them in the chick shack, and then Dan pulls that into the one of the chicken runs so that there's a little more shelter from rain and that sort of thing. Then at about 8 or 9 weeks, they are big enough to need an entire run. And this is where the dual runs comes in quite handy. All we had to do is block off one of the runs and let the young ones have their own space so that they could continue to grow toward their laying age. So after trying to hatch our own chicks, we decided that we've got the skill if we need it, but with our schedules and things right now, it's much easier for us to go ahead and buy chicks from the hatchery in the spring. And it would also guarantee us to have hens rather than roosters. So we culled all of the roosters, which I'm really happy about because the 2 older roosters were just beating up on the hens when they would try to mate. They were pulling feathers out, and some of our older hens never were able to regain the feathers that got pulled out by those roosters. They also got mean. They were attacking Dan when he would go into the runs and me when I would go in to gather eggs. So I was happy to see the roosters go. So this year in May of 2023, we got 20 more chicks from the hatchery, and we decided to go with all barred rock because they're pretty docile and they're easy to care for, they're large, and they lay the good eggs. But even though we got them from the hatchery, 2 of them ended up being up roosters, so those got culled a couple weeks ago, and so now we're ready to put about 18 hens into our flock. Normally we'll probably only get about 10 chicks, but because we tried to hatch our own eggs last year and ended up with only about 6 or 7 hens, we ordered extra this year. So having barred rock hens of different ages, it's really hard to tell which ones were from which year to know which ones need to be culled out of the flock. And that's where the banding comes in. Our barred rocks start laying around 20 weeks. So we are banding them here at about 18 weeks. They get a band of a particular color around their leg, and that way we can tell which year they are from. This year we're using white, last year we used black, and our first flock we didn't have any bands. We just use these plastic zip ties. When you cut the end off after putting it around their foot, you want to make sure you don't drop that in the coop because it could be bad for them. It is a two-person job. One of them grabs the chicken, turns them upside down, and the other one does the banding. So we recommend doing this at dusk when they are starting to roost because it's much easier to grab them up off the roost and band them that way. And they're also a lot calmer. So now that our birds are banded, we can open up that little door to the chicken coop and they can all start to integrate into one big flock. And by winter, they will all be roosting indoors in the coop. When the new ones start to produce a decent sized egg, which they start off small and then they gradually get larger, we can cull some of our older hens. Egg production for hens start to decrease after about 2 to 3 years, so it's a good idea to add a few new ones and cull some of the older ones every year. So we'll be looking for our hens with no band since we know those are oldest when we go to cull, and likely at least take out the ones with missing feathers before the really cold winter hits. And that meat will not be something you would want to make fried chicken with. It's going to be tough. So I'll be making a video soon with a couple of recipes on what to do with that tough chicken. So the reason we have kind of a big flock, and it's only Dan and I, is because we sell some of the eggs. And when we sell the eggs, we get money to purchase feed. And so really our flock is sort of taking care of the expenses itself. Many of the first year layer hens will continue to lay eggs over the first winter. And since our hens are just starting to lay here in the fall, that will likely be the case for us. But normally, whether or not you have eggs during the winter depends on how much light the hens have to lay. When the days start getting super short, less than 14 hours, their egg production will go down, and then eventually over the winter, most of them will stop laying. Right now in Iowa, we have about 12.5 hours of light, so we are under that 14 hours, and we are seeing a slow in production of eggs. So out of the 25 or so that are layers right now, we only got 8 eggs last night. Adding light on a timer can keep your hens laying. So between 14 to 16 hours of light is ideal for them to go ahead and continue to keep laying throughout the winter. But I will say that studies are showing now that 17 or more hours of light actually decreases egg production. So you really want them on that timer. The first year we added extra light to our coop. The second year last year we did not add extra light to our coop, and we were still getting around 4 to 8 or so eggs every day, and that was likely due to the 6 or 7 new hens that we had. But it was really nice to have a light in our coop anyway that we could flip on and go in the dark to gather those eggs. So how about you? How is your flock coming along this year? Are you going to have extra light in the coop in the winter? I hope to have a homesteading video out about once a week now, and then on Saturday I will do information about my weight loss journey. So I will see you this Saturday for an update on my weight loss journey, and then midweek next week hopefully I'm back again with another homesteading video. I'll be linking to the full build of our coop, how Dan made free nest boxes for our coop and our entire chicken playlist. See you next time.